Hello, my name is Ed Vidlak. I'm a planner and architect with BVH Architecture. I'm joined with me today by two of my colleagues who have been working with Manitou Springs, the city of Manitou Springs, and a special task force who over the last several weeks has been studying concepts, exploring alternatives for rehabilitating the historic Hiawatha Gardens Dance Hall into a new use that will position the building and the site to serve the greater Manitou Springs community well into the future. We've been very proud to be part of this process, and it has included exploring options with both the site and the building that we're eager to share with you today. Michaela Kaisers is our site planning expert and landscape architect. She's with DHM Design, and she'll be walking through some of those site options with us today. And then Jennifer Davis is part of our planning and architectural group at BVH Architecture, and she'll be walking through some of the building amenities and some of the building considerations. This has been an incredible process to date. This is only part one of several parts in walking the building, mapping the building design from concept exploration through hopefully arriving to a final solution that may end up actually merging or sharing some of the concepts between the four alternatives that we'll share with you today. There are a number of goals that we have explored early on with the task force in the city of Manitou Springs. And it's important to note that as the professional side, the consulting side of this team has been really facilitating the dialogue and the discussion and the exploration of ideas, but those ideas have really been driven by the task force, community leaders in the city. So a number of goals, kind of overarching goals, have been explored and have sort of defined where we are at this point, and are informing the alternatives that we want to share with you. Some of those goals are very pragmatic, and they include, accessibility, improving security, how the mobility hub is shaped and will serve the day-to-day operations of the site. But one of the overarching goals, and very importantly, is the rehabilitation of the existing building and what that might mean for the community of Manitou Springs. There are only a handful of dance halls that has survived the growth in dance halls that occurred between the 1920s and 1950s, where there's some estimation of 100,000 of these were constructed across the country. And for Manitou Springs to have a surviving example of one of those dance halls is pretty incredible. Dance and music is really a unifying force in our communities. It has been throughout history. And for the task force to look at this as an opportunity for the dance hall, the Hiawatha Gardens Dance Hall, to serve the greater good of the community going into the future is pretty remarkable. We're very proud to be part of that process and that exploration. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer, who will share some of the initial ideas on how the dance hall could be repurposed and rehabbed for future use. And then Michaela is going to share some of the site design options that we've been exploring along the way.
In the plans that you're going to see in the next couple of slides, we've taken a couple uses into consideration that you might want to use moving forward with the dance hall and the rehabilitation of that. So you can see here that we have a couple schemes moving forward where maybe it's a banquet layout, which would be a smaller number of folks that you could fit in there, but where you're assuming there's tables and chairs set up, Or is it a lecture? Is it, you know, bringing in an author to talk about their book? Or is it community learning sessions? Or can we use it again as a dance hall? We do have the opportunity for great connections from indoor to outdoor relationships. So we've highlighted that in some of the schemes that you'll see today, but that's a great amenity of this site, that we have that with the dance hall as it stands today, and it can be rehabilitated in the future.
So to build off of that, in terms of the site, some of the big picture goals on each of these are to provide opportunities for parking. And from there, those people that are exiting their vehicles have access to the bus stop and shelter on the west side of the site here. And if you aren't arriving by vehicle, you may be coming via the bus, or also providing options for bikes, bike lockers. And in terms of that multi-mobile community and parking lot, also looking at electric vehicle charging stations and planning for the future uses of this site. So each of these alternatives takes that into mind, really looking and capitalizing on the pedestrian and bicycle connections, as well as those vehicular circulation throughout. So a concurrent project which ties into our site is the potential future creek trail connection, which will provide access to pedestrians and bicyclists to this Hiawatha Gardens site. So on this first alternative, you see that a pedestrian may enter the site from the plaza area here. If they're coming from the creek and have access to the building, they could exit the bus stop shelter via an accessible ramp or stairs to also access this large plaza area. And if arriving by vehicle, the main vehicular entry is located on the north side of the site, adjacent and across from Pinion Lane. These renderings just give an overview of what this alternative may look like. So here you can see where that access to the parking lot is, and also the future trail, creek crossing, access to the plaza area and the building, and as it relates to the bus shelter. And another bird's eye view looking from the northeast, looking back on the site.
Yep, in these two building schemes, we thought this orientation with the restrooms to the north side of the plaza, the breezeway to the south, that connector into the reception hall, kind of allowed for a protected plaza to the south. The structures that you're seeing on the south are reminiscent of structures that were on the site back on the 20s, little pavilions out in the site. So we use that as inspiration here for something that could be an awning to protect a performer or as a shade structure. And we'll put the next stages will be developing these plazas further as far as planter locations, art locations, bringing more design to that level. But right now we're thinking about the building configurations. So you can go to the next slide. And this option allows for the pass through on the patio to the south. That would be the covered patio under the existing roof, but that connection from both sides of the site. And while having the restrooms connected on the south side and leaving that plaza space further to the north.
For alternative 2, you'll see that the entry into the parking lot is in the current location to the northeast of the site. Another future study to be determined by the city is the possibility of implementing and keeping the northwest entry into this site. And you'll see on this alternative that the big, large plaza area is maintained in this location. And as Jennifer was mentioning, another opportunity in this plaza space could be public art and tying that into the rest of Manitou Springs. And then looking at just some of the landscape, we'd want to incorporate the City of Manitou Springs landscape planting guidelines throughout this site and make sure that we're water wise in those choices as well. So very similar in terms of the plaza orientation and location. It is a little bit larger in this alternative and still incorporates bicycle racks and bike walkers and the electric vehicle charging stations on the north side of the site. Those bird's eye aerial views, you'll see that the entry is a little bit further to the east, and then you start to see what this plaza space may become.
This floor plan is actually our largest floor plan in the options that we're showing you. It's got a large space and really it's the large restrooms supporting the users. So this capacity could be 845. And so we've provided enough restrooms to support that use in this option. So you've got the dance hall. In most of these schemes, in fact, all of them, we've been showing a warming kitchen, storage space, and then this breezeway connection to the north is actually the closest to the historical massing and building configuration that had been on the site. So that's one thing that you'll see in this option. And then allowing for that large plaza on the left if that site scheme is selected. This building option is a little bit smaller, so it could hold fewer people. So this dance hall capacity is 489 right now. And that's assuming that that back half is usually filled with tables if you were having some kind of a reception. And then the south half could be left for dancing. But those restrooms, this option are basically the same width. That building component is the same width as the existing dance hall. So that relationship is a little bit different. And then again, changes the experience of that plaza. There's a little bit more room to get around the north half of this building if you're looking back at the site. So that's a differentiator for this plan.
Alternative 3 looks at the entry connection mid-block off of Old Man's Trail as you come into the site and provides walkways around the entire Hiawatha Gardens main building with that covered breezeway, providing also that connection to the creek. And each of these options you'll see trying to capitalize on the natural aesthetic of this site as well. And then as you proceed through the parking lot, there's a secondary entry exit off of El Paso Boulevard in its current location. Again, this alternative incorporates the bike racks and bike walkers and is mindful of that future trail connection for pedestrians and bicyclists. From the bird's eye view here, you'll see the additional parking spaces on the west side of the building as you proceed through the parking lot, still providing access to the bus shelter with an accessible crosswalk.
This is actually the same plan we just looked at on the site. As you saw, there was more of a continuous plaza all the way around. So that was in a smaller plaza option. Go to the next slide. And this option is kind of this is our medium-sized north restroom. So this building configuration is sized to still have a number of folks in the dance hall. That number is 679 in this scheme, but we've also incorporated the parking department offices in this scheme. That was something that we heard from the task force might be an incentive to have folks in an office who would be providing some supervision to this building. 24/7 or at least during the workday, so that they can keep an eye on this facility, and that might be a need for Manitou city offices, just that to have these folks in a different location. So that's what you're seeing in this plan, and then the restroom capacity to fit both of those uses. And also knowing that the previous plans might be a few too many people to manage, but that this might be a good happy medium as far as occupancy.
For alternative 4, you'll see again in this alternative a mid-block entry for vehicular circulation with, again, the entry exit off of El Paso Boulevard. Because of the location of where the restrooms are sited in this alternative, there is an opportunity for a larger plaza space on the north side of the building here. And again, providing pedestrian and bicyclist circulation around the building, and that accessible walk across into the bus shelter. And in 3D, this is what you begin to see again with the location of that restroom sited on the southwest of the building, accessible parking and an accessible crosswalk to the bus shelter, and then that larger plaza area on the north side of the building here.
Great. This configuration pulls the restroom addition back, allowing for additional plaza space and kind of utilizing what we have on the south, so that isn't kind of an underused area. It still allows for pass through the patio and through that breezeway to the plaza. And that glass front kind of shows that connection between the two buildings. There's one more. Oh, maybe not. On this scheme for B, this is a little bit more of a regular configuration as far as it's, all lined up the reception hall, breezeway, restrooms. So it makes for a little bit simpler construction. And on this site, this version is the one that we have prepared where we actually don't have that patio to the south. So we have an extra bay of tables on the inside. And there are a few more feet of overhang where the current foundations are in the creek. So we do have that outdoor connection still established, but we don't have the patio in this version. And the last plan version we have for you is another reception hall. Again, this has the smaller restrooms. So I haven't mentioned that dance hall capacity, when we're showing these with tables and chairs in these small restrooms, is only 282 people. So that is a consideration for the small restrooms that fit nicely on the site, but it does limit the capacity of the reception hall. And on this option, we do have those parking offices again, and we've sited those to the south. They'll actually have a great view of the creek, but while the restrooms, we place those at the north to be closer to the transit hub, so that's easily recognizable or could be signed pretty easily. Enter into this breezeway to use those restrooms if you're just using the mobility hub features of the site. That's our last plan. Ed, did you want to close us out?
Well, I just want to reiterate briefly that this has been an exciting process for us to be a part of, and also reiterate the fact that the task force in the city of Manitou Springs has done a really, in our opinion, or humble opinion, they've done a marvelous job in exploring a variety of options. And we've tried to coalesce those options into 4 distinct alternatives, each with various advantages. We're really excited to share these alternatives with the community as the task force in the city of Manitou Springs has been really careful to drive home during this process that this is the overarching goal here is that this become a truly a community asset for Greater Manitou Springs. And so that notion of flexibility, that notion of it being another center for community activity within Manitou Springs has really been one of the key drivers in developing these 4 alternatives. We're excited to hear back from the community members on their impressions on these alternatives, and we're eager to learn and listen from that feedback and allow that feedback to inform the next step of development and design. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.